When I was walking on the towpath the other day, I came across this barge and really wanted to draw it just because of this fantastic garden that it had on the top of it. The whole thing was just covered with plants. When I photographed it, I did photograph it from a little distance away because I was aware that there may be people inside it and I didn't want to disturb them. The flowers didn't really show up from that distance, so I wanted to paint it and really exaggerate those and get some contrast in between those bright flowers and the dark behind it with all the shadows. When you're painting and drawing in midsummer, we're in August now, so it does feel a little bit autumnal actually at the moment today, but we've got that very strong light and we've got a lot of leaf on things, so we've got these really heavy shadows. So that contrast between the lights and the darks really makes a sunny picture. So when we take a photograph of something that we want to draw, we mustn't confine ourselves to just copying that exactly how it is. We need to think about why we wanted to draw that subject and what it is about it that attracted us, and maybe emphasise some of those things, maybe exaggerate some things, move some things and alter them. When we're doing art, we're not taking a photograph, we're creating an artwork. I decided to do this in a circle. I'm not entirely sure why. It's a long time since I've done anything in a circular composition, but I just fancied having a go. And I think it contrasts well, the circle, with having those strong lines of the canal bank. So you'll see after I go around the plate, I draw around the plate onto my paper. The paper I'm using is a Saunders Waterford, and it's a £300 paper, so it's quite a heavy paper. It's nice and smooth to draw on with the ink pen. The ink pen is a size 0.8, so it takes plenty of water. So after I've drawn round it, I then drew round the plate on the photograph as well, so I'm doing it pretty much to scale with the photograph. I will give you a link to this photograph down below in the description if you want to have a look at it. I do have a Facebook page where I put photographs that I take for you to use reference free. So if you use them and you want to make them into a birthday card or you want to exhibit your artwork from them, you don't have to worry about any royalties with those. I'm giving you those for you to use, and that's absolutely fine. So anything on that Facebook page, any photographs there, you feel free to print off and use as often as you like. So I'll give you that link in the description below. So I'm going a bit off on a tangent here. I was trying to remember what I was telling you. So I think really the circular shape contrasts well with those very sharp lines of the edge of the canal, the edge of the towpath, and then you've got the two tracks where the grass is in the middle, where people walk, and then the grass grows in the middle. So you've got a lot of straight lines. And you'll see what I did to begin with is I put the photograph, once I cut it out, I put that onto the circle on the paper and put some lines by the side that you can see, just to give me some guidelines as where to start. I didn't do a lot of measuring. Like I said, because I wanted it to be a little bit free and more of a character to this boat rather than just doing anything photorealistic, but just having that bit of a structure there for where the actual canal and the water and everything was sitting gave me a good start for the ink drawing. Now when you're drawing in ink, obviously you can't erase it, so you've got to relax in a way and not get too upset and hung up if you do a line in the wrong place. What I find, if you've done something in the wrong place, don't worry about it, just carry on sketching, carry on drawing. And the lines that are wrong, if you emphasise the lines that are correct, eventually the lines that are wrong kind of merge away. I wasn't overly happy with how dark I went behind the boat, at the back of the boat, but actually there's a lot of trees there and there's no sunlight getting to the canal in that area, and as you know, the water's fairly deep, and it's got that canopy of trees above it, so it was very dark, and we have got that contrast going on. So to get interest in your pictures, you hear me use that word a lot. It's one of the elements and principles of design. When you have contrast, it makes things more interesting. It keeps the viewer's eye looking at your painting for longer. So the contrast we've got here, I've just talked about the contrast between the curve of the round shape that we've made to draw on, but also the curves in the trees with those very straight lines of the towpath and the canal edge. But we've also got a very good contrast going on between that very dark areas where the light can't get to, and leaving some white paper. So don't be afraid to leave white paper. We've also got some contrast going on with the colour, I used very limited colours for the overall thing, so I just used blue and green and brown because that's really what we can all see in the actual surroundings there, and a bit of a darker green for some of the bigger trees. And the red, which of course is on the opposite side of the colour wheel to green, so it shows up really well against green and provides a really good contrast. I saved the red for the top of that garden on the top of that boat. So like I say, on the photograph, you'll see you can hardly see those flowers, although the whole thing was covered, and I was actually wondering how the roof managed to stay up on that little barge, because the weight of all that compost, especially when it was wet with the rain, you'd think that would be quite a lot of weight on the top of the barge there. So yeah, so we've got that red against the green, and just having that red on the barge makes the barge the focal point, because it was the barge that I was interested in when I took this photograph. I take a lot of photographs on the canal. It's just behind our house. It's somewhere I walk along regularly, and there's a lot of barges parked up and down, especially in the summer. When the children were little, we always referred to them as Rosie and Jim boats, because obviously that was on the TV at the time, going back quite a lot of years, but when they were little, that was on the telly, and we called them Rosie and Jim boats. But it's nice seeing the barges. I did comment to my husband when I got home that I'm quite surprised that lots of them have gnomes and barbecues and goodness knows what else along the towpath, and obviously setting up camp for quite a while. So it's good to see, because especially if you walk along at tea time, you get lots of nice smells coming out with all the cooking that's going on. So you'll see that the ink drawing I've speeded up quite a bit, because obviously it takes quite a long time to do all this inking. How you do your shadows is entirely up to you. I've talked about this before. Some people like to use dashes, some people dots, different ways of drawing with ink and different ways of mark making, and you'll find you work with what goes with your style. The only thing I would say is water lies flat, so keep your lines going straight when you're doing the actual canal water, because you don't want it to look like the water isn't lying flat against gravity, obviously. So don't be afraid to go dark, like I said. Really press on in places and take your time with this ink drawing. Be careful not to smudge. You'll see I work down the page and leave it to dry for a little while before you get rid of those pencil lines. So I did speed this up quite a bit when I was doing the ink drawing, but I haven't speeded this video up at all whilst I was doing the painting at the end, because I wanted you to see how quickly that process was. So when you're doing ink and watercolour, or some of you might call it ink and wash, the whole point of it is you've got that firm foundation of a drawing, and you're enjoying the drawing process, and you don't want to cover all that up with lots of thick, heavy layers of paint. You want the paint just to be a wash, as the word suggests, just to give you that hint of colour, the colour for the subject that you've got there, and enjoy just putting that on really loosely, wet in wet. So the good thing about this heavy paper that I'm using is it takes lots of water. So you wet the paper first, and then it's all done before it dries. I didn't allow this to dry at all. Everything was put in here wet into wet. So the first loose mixes of colour with plenty of water in went wet onto a wet paper, and then you'll see at the end I get the palette and put some very strong thick mixes straight from the palette for those red flowers on the top, and reds and oranges that I popped on the top there. So I just thought it was a really nice subject to draw. Like I said, I've given you that photograph there if you want to do it. Really pretty. It's something I haven't done for a while, and I enjoyed doing it. And I think the thing about drawing for me, you'll see that I draw in my own work. If you're familiar with my own work, you can see it over on my website. If you're not, or you can follow me on Instagram, because I put all my new work goes onto Instagram. So actually that's the best place to see where my own paintings are. Is I enjoy the process of drawing as much as I enjoy the process of painting. So I actually draw on top of my paintings. When I do the acrylics, I draw on top of them with acrylic paint brushes and paint pens. And I think for me, drawing is very, very relaxing. We've got a lot going on at home at the moment. It's only a few days now before we finish. We're selling our dairy herd, which is a big thing after all these years of milking. My husband's been milking cows for 40 years, and it's time for him to have a rest from doing that. But of course, it's all very stressful coming up to the sale. So I did this morning really to switch off from everything else that was going on, and I can really I can't emphasize enough how important art is for you to relax and to forget about everything else that you might be worrying about at the moment, because when you're in the process of doing this ink drawing, particularly the drawing rather than just popping the paint on at the end, which you can see didn't take me very long, but the process of concentrating on that drawing really makes you switch off from everything else. And actually you'll find once you finish that, you're much more relaxed. Your muscles and everything, just really get into it. And if you look at the lines I'm making, that I made for the trees, for the background, for the water, for the grasses, I'm not drawing every single bit of grass. I'm not looking for where every little leaf is. I'm doing, again, we'll come back to that word contrast. I'm contrasting the lines. So I've got some straight lines for grass. I've got some wiggly lines for the leaves and things. Just pushing and pulling the pen around the paper, going heavier in places and lighter in places, because we've got dappled light in summer, and it's just so easy to do, just to give that impression of dappled light, to make that real heavy black line underneath the base of your hedges and your trees where that light can't penetrate. And then every now and again have a little chink of light coming through, leave a little bit of white paper, and that's like a little chink of light coming through. You'll also see I used a tissue for the clouds. This is the simplest sky you could possibly do. I mixed together cobalt blue and cerulean because I felt it was halfway between the two. The paper was already wet, like I say. Just popped that blue on, got a dry piece of kitchen towel and pulled them clouds out. And you can see it's very effective. Again, because the emphasis is on the drawing, we don't then want to be doing an overcomplicated sky with lots of different colours. We've got to pick and choose when we're doing artwork what's important to us and what it is about the subject and the topic that we're drawing that we want to focus the eye on. And here it was the barge. Even though it's not the best drawn barge in the world, I did struggle with the front of it a bit. It has like a blue canopy going over the front of it, and it was at a funny angle and all the rest of it. But again, I didn't worry about it because I was enjoying the process. And so you come out with something with a bit of character, and I'm not bothered if somebody says, oh, that's just not absolutely perfect how it should be. We know what it is. We can see it's water. We can see it's a barge sat on the water. So if you're putting your focus on there and on those flowers, on that garden, on the roof, you don't need to then start putting colours and focus elsewhere around that circle, because that's going to draw your eye back away from that focal point. So you'll see at the end I go on with them very strong colours. Again, because the paper's still wet, if you put something on that's too loose, it's going to make a mess, so you need to put a stronger concentration in, and that's something I've talked about a lot in other videos. I've got a new Skillshare course out, so if you want to have a look at that, that is painting a rose, again in ink and watercolour. I will come back and do something in a different medium soon. I know a lot of you like me working with the dough and ink tents, so we'll perhaps take a look at doing something with those very shortly. I do apologise I've not been uploading much. I did explain to some of you might remember about the situation we have here at home at the moment, and I will hope to get back into a routine and get back to doing more for you, which of course probably have more time in the autumn and winter anyway, as I always do. Okay, so I think that's about everything I have to tell you. Do have a look down below in the description for that link to this photograph, because it's a very pretty photograph, and don't feel that you have to do it in a circle like this. You could paint the whole thing if you wanted to. And you don't have to do it in ink and watercolour. You could draw it all in pencil, and then do a much more detailed watercolour painting if you wanted to, and of course you could do it in acrylic. But you'll see, do like I've done and exaggerate those flowers on the top of the boat, because that's what makes it an illustration, and that's what makes it fun, and have that contrast between the light on the boat and the white side of the boat and that very dark tree behind it where that light can't get through. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if there's anything particular you want me to teach you in the future. In the meantime, you really enjoy your painting and drawing. Relax, use it for therapy, and have some fun. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye for now.